Okay, this is four-voice dictation, and we have a doctor on the stand here, and it is,
Noel Weiss, MD.
yeah. So our attorneys are Mr. Costello for the plaintiff, D1 is Mr. Gibbs, D2 is Mr. Mosseri, and I am plaintiff counsel, Ms. Costello. Is it Ms. or Mr. Costello?
I am the witness.
I am attorney for defense 1, Mr. Gibbs.
I'm attorney for defense 2, Mr. Mosseri.
Okay, this is a warm-up, just practice, and let's read it in 15s, please. On the record. Doctor, would you state your full name, please?
Noel Scott Weiss.
What is your address?
4434 137th Avenue Northeast, Bellevue.
How long have you lived in the state of Washington?
How long? Oh, about 4.5 years, a little over 5 years.
Are you employed by the University of Washington?
That's correct.
In what capacity?
I'm an associate professor in the Department of Epidemiology in the School of Public Health and Community Medicine.
How long have you been employed at the University of Washington?
For the full time, I've lived in the state a little over 5 years.
Are you in the same department as Dr. Bricey?
No, we're in the same school. He's in the Department of Environmental Health.
I don't think he's a doctor.
It's Mr. Peter Bricey.
I should have said professor. Are you an MD?
Yes.
Where did you take your undergraduate work?
I got an undergraduate degree from Stanford University.
Then where did you go to medical school?
Stanford also.
When did you graduate from Stanford?
1967.
That's medical school 67.
Mm-hmm.
Would you give us an outline of your training?
I got further training, specialized training after I left Stanford. In 1969, I got a Master of Public Health degree from the Harvard College of Public Health. In 1971, a Doctor of Public Health degree from the same institution. From 1971 to 73, I served with the National Center for Health Statistics as an epidemiologist. And since 1973, when I came to Seattle, I worked both at the university and jointly at the Fred Hutchinson's Cancer Research Center.
You spend part of your time in each?
That's right.
How much time do you spend at the University of Washington?
That's hard to say exactly. I'd say about maybe 60%, equal parts roughly.
What do you do at the University of Washington?
Well, associate professor subsumes it all, but the usual combination of research and teaching.
What kind of research are you involved in?
Primarily cancer research, epidemiology being the study of the causes of disease and cancer, epidemiology being the study of the causes of cancer.
What's your particular interest in that field?
My particular interest is in the relationship of hormones, endocrine factors to cancer.
What direction is your research taking? What are you?
Well, the particular kinds of cancer I'm studying right now are mostly cancer in women, uterine, ovarian, large bowel cancer.
How long have you been actively involved in this research?
Oh, ever since I came to Seattle.
Does this take up most of your time?
I'd say somewhat more than half, and the remainder is teaching and a little administrative work.
How do you go about your research on cancer and the hormonal aspect of it?
Well, it's largely the same way an epidemiologist goes about studying cancer and any hormones or not. You've got several approaches available, but in the broadest sense, it's making observations on the population.
With statistics?
Yes, you try in a symptomatic way to observe what's happened and attempt to make inferences from what you observe to what might be the factors that have pre-caused these cancers to develop.
Could you give us just a brief example of how this would work?
Sure, let me give you 2 examples if I might. Let's talk about cancer of the uterus, for example. One thing we do is check and see if the ratings of this disease might be changing over a period of time. This particular disease, they've changed quite a bit. Say they've doubled in the last decade. What they then do is try and determine what else we can see that has changed in the past decade that might relate to this sort of cancer. That's one particular piece of work that I did. An alternative approach might be to take women with this particular cancer and look into their past and see how they might differ from a group of women who don't get the cancer, again, with respect to things you think might be related. That's a general approach that's used.
Okay. Do you have assistants to help you in gathering the statistics?
Oh, yeah.
I take it that part of your work would be supervising students or assistants who actually interview women?
That's correct.
How many interviews would be involved? Do you have any idea?
In the last several years, we've interviewed perhaps 2,000 women.
And then the other approach is, how do you get the statistics?
Right when I first came in 1973, I was responsible for establishing something called the Cancer Surveillance System, which is a system whereby the cancer incidence in the western part of the state of Washington is determined. It's basically a matter of systematically going to hospitals and identifying patients who develop cancer and keeping track of it that way.
You mentioned when you or your associates interview women with uterus cancer, we'll say, as compared to those that do not have uterus cancer, you check certain things in their background which you think might be a contributing factor, kind of things?
Well, in this particular instance, the thing of particular interest is the prior use of estrogen-containing hormones.
DES?
That is one example, but even more commonly, these menopausal estrogens. Premarin, for example.
Why do you inquire about the estrogen use?
Okay, it's getting into the subject now, but basically you're interested in anything you think might stimulate the uterine tissue to grow, because that's the kind of thing, you know, if anything's going to cause cancer, it might be something like that. Estrogens are hormones naturally produced and naturally do cause the uterine tissue to grow more rapidly. Therefore, it's the kind of thing that when taken externally, you're also interested in. The other main reason is I mentioned that if you look at things that are changing, possibly it's parallel to changing rates of disease, and estrogen preparations are being used much more now than they were 10 or 20 years ago.
Okay, so you asked this question because there is a suspicion, at least, that estrogen can contribute to uterus cancer.
That's right.
And that's based, I take it, on at least two things. Number one, something that is used now that wasn't used 20 years ago. Number two, that it can cause an increase in uterine tissue.
Tissue growth, yes, not necessarily malignant growth, but right. I might add, you probably don't care, but as an aside, many of the questions we ask aren't nearly so well targeted as that one. We tend to ask questions about background information more to pick up clues than anything else. This particular question on estrogens is more focused than most.
Okay, have you done any research work within your specialty on polychlorinated biphenyls?
No, the only work I've done relating to occupational exposures was a recent study collaboratively with a graduate student on the study of Boilermakers in Seattle and the possible relationship of that occupation exposure and cancer. But that's the closest my research has carried me.
What was the suspected cause, if that's a good word, in the Boilermakers?
It was a very weak suspicion about possible welders within that union that might have inhaled some of the materials, the metals that might have possibly led to lung cancer increase. But in general, it was more of sort of a checkout of the union to look for things rather than to test existing hypotheses of the materials of metals.
I take it then you haven't interviewed people with cancer who have a known exposure to PCBs?
That's correct.
How did you become aware of the case of Starbuck and Curtis?
I was contacted by Ms. Cochran for my opinion on the material.
Do you know how she got your name?
I think she mentioned she got it through Dr. William Johnson at the School of Public Health.
When were you first contacted?
I'd have to check, but I think it was in July of '78.
Your initial contact, I take it, was by telephone?
Yes,
And then there was a follow-up with correspondence?
yes,
Have you brought that correspondence with you today?
yes.
Could I see that first, please?
Sure, it's all here in one stage or another.
Maybe the easiest way is if I just look at it and see what I think is important.
Okay,
Doctor, in response to Ms. Cochran's letter or telephone call and sending you various things to review, I understand you wrote her a letter dated July 18, 1978, and you brought that with you and showed me a copy?
right.
Doctor, I believe the enclosure was a summary of your thoughts, and you start off by listing what you thought was evidence suggesting that polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, would be carcinogenic in man. I'd like to just go over those if you would, Doctor.
You want me to read it?
Yes, would you please?
Several species, including primates, are known to produce electrophilic metabolites of PCBs. Electrophiles are believed to represent ultimate chemical carcinogens, and these specific PCB metabolites are known to be capable of binding in cellular macromolecules, another necessary ingredient for carcinogenesis. Okay, now,
Is this his letter?
Yes,
What's the date of it?
July 18, 1978. What's the importance of primates in such a study?
sure, well, you know, every species is different, but as we all know, some are more similar to man than others. Man being a primate, and if you find something in other primates, it's more likely that the same thing will apply for us, this kind of primate.
You said several species, including primates, are known to produce electrophilic metabolites PCBs. What are electrophilic metabolites?
It's a thing that I probably can't explain terribly well because it's getting a little out of my field, but basically an electrophile, from the word itself, is something that pulls electrons, and chemically these agents, which there are many, are the ones that when we have a known carcinogen, many of them are electrophiles as well. Now, metabolites simply means that it's a product that the body converts PCBs into a metabolite, another product similar to PCBs, which is an electrophile.
And you go on to say that electrophiles are believed to represent ultimate chemical carcinogens.
Right.
And these specific PCB metabolites are known to be capable of binding to cellular macromolecules, another necessary ingredient of carcinogenesis. Okay, you say electrophiles are believed to represent ultimate chemical carcinogens. What do you mean by that?
Well, nobody's exactly sure, but one thought is that at some point something has to interact with a cell to make that cell grow abnormally. We call that the definition of malignancy and abnormality of cell growth. Well, what is it that can induce this abnormality of cell growth? Well, one, the kinds of things that do this, that we know do this, various TARs or various agents that we know in animals and in man as well, that cause cancer have this property. They are electrophiles. And the rest of that paragraph is that at least in some species or something of that sort, these electrophiles seem to be able to actually get to the cell. They bind with these big molecules, macromolecules in the cell. So at least it's plausible that because of the nature of PCBs and their metabolites, that they could cause cancer.
Okay, enough of that for one day. I will take those, and then we're going to do we're going to do the 3 minutes warm up for the CSR exam, and then we will do that.
Good morning. Good morning.
Okay. I wrote down all the preview words, including those in the warm-up. So I'm going to give you right now the ones that are in the warm-up. These aren't all included in the test, but I will give you more preview words for the test before we start that. So before the warm-up, we have in the warm-up, Maria Johnson, Brothers Concrete, James Phillips, Roseville, Campbell, Tucson, Arizona, Bell Construction, Evergreen Steel. Okay, and this is a deposition, and this will be 3 minutes of warm-up. We're reading the larger marks in 15s. I am Ms. Sanchez, applicant's counsel.
I am the witness. I am attorney for defense 1, Ms. Johnson.
I'm attorney for defense 2, Ms. Lee.
Begins with Ms. Johnson.
For the record.
Nope, that's me.
Nope.
Oh, no, it's you.
Ms. Johnson, for the record. Mr. Phillips, my name is Maria Johnson. As you can see, I'm one of many who will be chatting with you today. I represent Brothers Concrete. Before we start the deposition, could you state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
Robert James Phillips, Phillips.
Okay. I do have a copy of your Social Security card, and I notice it has a single L for Phillips.
I went like 25 years of working before I found out that it is spelled incorrectly. So I have 2 cards. I have an alias, which would be that currently. My other one is really one, which has 2 L's on it.
Have you ever worked under the 1L name?
For 25 years, I worked with it.
Okay.
I didn't even realize it. You know, nobody ever said anything. You know how you give it to the people you work for? Nobody ever caught it, and I never caught it.
That's interesting. And what is your residence address, please?
6815 Lakeside, Roseville, California.
How long have you lived at that address?
Since March of '98.
Where did you live prior to the Roseville address?
That would be 883 Westward Court, Campbell, California. I don't know the zip code.
And for how long did you live in Campbell?
I moved to Campbell in May, I believe, of '87 about.
Okay. And before Campbell, where did you live?
Objection, there is no need to go that far back, counsel.
I would like the information to confirm my identity, if you wouldn't mind.
That is all for the record. Please answer the question.
I lived in Tucson, Arizona,
And for how long did you live in Tucson?
about 29 years.
Have you ever had your deposition taken before?
Yes, I have.
How many times?
I believe at least once, maybe twice. My brother was killed erecting a tower crane.
Okay. Were you deposed as a precipient witness or?
As a family member witness, I guess.
Okay, all right. Did you actually observe the incident?
No.
Okay. I assume there was some kind of a wrongful death case?
Yes.
When did your brother die?
That would be 80 or 81. 1981.
Please don't guess or speculate. Only tell us what you know.
Well, that's not true, counsel. We are entitled to his best estimate.
It sounded to me like he was guessing.
Okay. And the other time you had your deposition taken, can you recall when that was?
Yes, the actual deposition was done in early 98.
And was that a case in which you were a party?
I was involved in that lawsuit, yes.
And what kind of lawsuit was that?
I completely tore the tendons in my right shoulder, resulting in shoulder surgery. I later sued the general contractor.
Was that a workers' comp or was it civil as well?
It was a workers' comp, but I don't know about the civil part.
Okay.
You would have to look that one up. I don't know.
The general contractor that you sued, was that your employer?
No, I sued Bell Construction.
Bell?
Yes.
Who was your employer at that time?
Evergreen Steel
And where were they located?
in Campbell.
I'll ask more about both of those later.
No problem.
Have you taken any medications today that might cause you to be sleepy or drowsy?
No.
And is there any reason that you might be impaired, either unable to hear or understand my questions?
God, that was a 3 minutes warm up. Boy, that would have been a fun start to a tape, right, Candy? Okay, so the extra preview words now are Dr. Pat Woods, Rite Aid, CM1, MapQuest, Dr. James Lane, Tucson High School, Susan Phillips, Amy Phillips, Los Angeles, Interstate 5, San Jose. Okay, so this is week 3 Monday. This is a former CSR exam from March of 2016. I am Ms. Sanchez for Applicants Council.
I am the witness.
I am attorney for defense 1, Ms. Johnson.
I'm attorney for defense 2, Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Ms.
We're reading the large
Ms.
marks in 15s.
And it's Ms. Johnson for the record. Will you have trouble answering my questions today?
No, not that I know of.
And what medications have you taken in the last 24 hours?
Just my blood pressure pill.
Do you recall the name of the medication?
I don't remember. I know I take 1 pill daily, and that keeps everything under control.
Who prescribes the blood pressure pills?
Dr. Woods.
Dr. Pat Woods, does that sound right?
Yes.
Is Dr. Woods your family physician?
Yes, she is.
For how long have you treated with Dr. Woods as your family doctor?
For about 12 or 13 years now.
What pharmacy do you use for filling your prescription?
We always go to Rite Aid.
So you don't get any prescriptions through the mail or anything like that, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
Do you have a California driver's license?
Yes, I do.
Would you produce that, please? You can show it to your attorney and I'll take a look at it.
Here it is.
The record will reflect that Mr. Phillips has produced a California driver's license. It is a Class CM1.
What does that mean?
Class C is just your regular driver's license for driving a vehicle.
Right.
And the M1 is motorcycle.
Thank you, sir.
How far did you travel to the deposition today?
Around 10 miles.
You came from your residence in Roseville?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll go with MapQuest.
That's fine, so will I. Okay, how long did you spend preparing for this deposition with Ms. Sanchez?
What time did we start talking?
We started talking at 9:30.
Do you recall how long overall you spoke with her?
No, I didn't look at the clock.
Okay, what is your date of birth?
7/20/1958,
Where were you born?
Tucson, Arizona.
Do you remember who your family doctor was when you were growing up in Tucson?
Dr. Lane.
Lane?
Yes, Dr. James Lane.
Did you have any problems growing up? What I mean by that is major illnesses or injuries that required the need for any treatment or hospitalization?
No, ma'am.
Did you attend high school?
Yes.
And what school was that?
Tucson High School.
Did you finish?
Yes.
And when was that?
I graduated in 1970.
And while you were in high school, did you go do any sports or other activities or
Yes.
regular PE?
Yes.
What sports or activities did you do?
I played football and track.
Did you have any injuries while you were participating in the sports? I mean, other than the usual strains, bumps, or bruises?
No,
Have you attended college or a trade school?
I went to school through the union.
Which union was that?
Iron workers.
I would guess that they don't have sports like football at that school.
That's argumentative, but he can answer.
No,
I'm sorry, did the witness answer? I did not hear a response.
no,
Okay. Any injuries while you were in that schooling program?
no,
Have you served in the military?
no.
Have you received treatment in any military facility?
Yes, in high school.
Was your dad in the Air Force?
Well, he was civil service. He was a fireman.
And for what did you receive medical treatment?
I had a broken leg.
Is that the only time you went there that you can think of?
Yes, ma'am, that's it.
Okay. Have you ever been convicted of a felony?
No.
Are you married?
Yes, I am.
How many times?
Twice.
Was that your first wife's name?
I'll object as to relevance, counsel. How does that pertain to this lawsuit?
I am not going to debate with you. Are you instructing the witness not to answer?
No, but I would ask you to ask relevant questions.
In the interest of time, maybe we could stick with the last 10 years.
Are you currently married?
Yes, I am.
What is your wife's name?
Susan Phillips.
How long have you been married to Susan?
We got married in 1988.
Other than the anomaly with your social security number and the single L versus the double L, have you used any other names in your life?
No, ma'am.
Does Susan work?
No,
Was Susan working in the year of 2012 or 2013?
no.
Do you have children?
Yes.
How many?
Just the one daughter.
What is her name?
Object as to the form.
I think we are entitled to get that information as a possible witness to his injuries.
Would you please answer the question?
Amy Phillips.
And how old is Amy?
Amy is 35.
In the years of 2012 and 2013, did Amy live with you?
No, she was married then.
Okay. Other than Susan during the years of 2012 and 2013, were any other people financially dependent on you?
No,
During your time with Brothers Concrete, did you have any other work? That would mean work for goods, services, or credits?
no,
I'm going to ask you the same question for the other employer present here today.
no side jobs.
Well, let me ask the complete question. Did you have concurrent work while working for Evergreen Steel?
Not at all, no.
Okay, I'm going to look for an exhibit. Counsel, did you have questions?
Yes, I do. Let me jump in here.
Then I will pass the witness for now.
Good morning, Mr. Phillips. I have a few questions for you. When you were hired with Evergreen Steel,
I worked for them back in the 90s.
and where did you work for them?
That was down in Los Angeles on Interstate 5.
What were you doing on that project?
Bridges, bridge work, concrete work.
Do you recall your dates of employment with Evergreen?
I worked for them for approximately 1 week. When I say that, I worked for Evergreen for a few days and we got stopped. I went back for a day or two after that, about a week later.
You testified you went back about a week subsequent,
Yes, for a day or two.
and what was your job title at Evergreen?
I was just something like a helper.
What were your actual work duties, your physical work duties there?
I helped tie in rebar placement. I don't know exactly how to explain it completely. Can we go off the record for a second?
Absolutely.
You might as well go ahead and put it on the record.
Okay, let's go ahead and do that.
It's a piece of pipe about 4 inches in diameter. They run from one end of the bridge to the other end of the bridge, and you subsequently put cable in it.
Okay, so were you placing the pipe or were you just dealing only with the cables?
Placing pipe and adjusting it to height
And the pipe is placed and held in place with the rebar?
with rebar and wire.
Sorry?
Rebar and wire.
They want to know what you physically did.
I tied the pipe into place on the rebar with wire.
Were you working above ground?
Yeah, we were working on a deck inside the bridge before the concrete was poured.
So when you say a deck, did you have to utilize a ladder to access the deck?
Yes, I had to use a ladder.
Okay, how often or how many times in an average work shift were you required to go up and down that ladder to get to the deck?
Maybe 7 or 8 times.
Is that 7 or 8 different trips?
Yes, approximately 8 times.
And why were you going up and down so frequently?
For breaks and go to the bathroom.
Okay, how high was the ladder?
I'm going to say about 15 feet.
While you were working for Evergreen, how long was your average workday?
I believe they were 8-hour days.
Do you recall doing any overtime at Evergreen?
Not right offhand. I was a person that chased overtime, but I don't think we were doing 10-hour days.
Okay, do you remember who your supervisor was at Evergreen?
No, I do not.
Were there any other duties you had at Evergreen besides what we have described so far?
Object as vague and ambiguous.
I will join. Do you mean work-related activities?
Let me rephrase that. Have you described all of your job duties to us while you were employed at Evergreen?
Yes, I believe so.
About how many people were on your team up on the deck?
I believe there were 5 or 6.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Those are all of my questions for right now.
Are you ready to continue with your examination, counsel?
Yes, thank you. Did you work on any other projects for Brothers Concrete?
Yes, I worked on one other one
Do you remember where it was?
in San Jose.
Okay, and so what were you doing at the project in San Jose?
Concrete work.
Were you working on a bridge as well?
No, that's incorrect. I was doing footings.
Okay, and what does that mean?
There are holes in the ground that you put rebar into. From each and every hole in the ground, you proceed to build walls that are erected out of the ground. It is the bottom point of the building. It holds the entire weight of the building.
Okay, correct me if I am wrong. I got the impression that when you were working on the bridge, the rebar was for footings. Would that be incorrect?
The rebar that I was working with was for walls. We were building walls.
Okay,
There were 2 walls.
so the footings that you were doing were not in connection with the bridge work?
No, that was in the ground.
Okay,
When you say in the ground, what are we talking about?
We are talking a hole that was about as wide as this room and about 4 or 5 feet deep. The hole is approximately 200 feet long, and there were a number of them around the building.
was this a footing for a building?
Yes,
Okay, and so what kind of physical activities were involved in working with these footings?
carrying rebar, placement of rebar, tying the rebar in place.
What job was that?
That would be San Jose.
I think she wants to know who you were working for at that location.
That is exactly what I meant. Thank you, counsel.
Oh, that was with Brothers Concrete.
And when you were carrying rebar, how much did that weigh?
It can vary from 50 to 100 pounds that you put on your shoulder and carry it.
By yourself?
That's correct. I mean, if it is short, you take the entire bunch by yourself. If it is really long, you get more than one person and you carry as much as you are able to carry.
I'm going to return you back to Evergreen for a second. When you went to work for Evergreen, did you have any physical restrictions?
No.
Were you having any symptoms at the time you went to work for Evergreen?
What exactly do you mean?
Did you have pain in any parts of your body?
Any aches, pains, discomfort?
Yes,
Like what?
everything.
Okay. In this particular claim, you have alleged neck, back, both shoulders, both hands, both knees, both feet. Those body parts?
All those body parts hurt.
Okay. After you stopped working at Evergreen doing the bridge, were those symptoms the same, worse, or better?
They got better and now they are getting worse again.
Actually, I mean like your last day of employment.
On the last day of work,
Yes, on your last day there.
honestly, my knees were killing me, my feet were killing me, my shoulders were killing me.
Okay, were they better, worse, or the same in that period that you were employed there, that week's period of time?
They didn't get no better. At the end of the week, it was just as bad as when I started.
Are you saying you weren't any worse?
Objection, that's vague and ambiguous.
I would join in that objection.
You can answer the question if you understand it.
You know, you can have a good day today and tomorrow will be a bad day, so I can't really say if I was truly better or any worse. Everything was painful.
Okay, I'm going to ask that same question as for Brothers. When you started working for Brothers, were you having the pain in all the exact same body parts?
Yeah, approximately. It was pretty much the same.
While you were employed at Brothers, did you work 8-hour days as well?
Yes, it was always 8 hours.
Okay. Do you use any kind of a back brace for support?
No,
Would you consider that your symptoms were better, worse, or the same at the end of the period of time that you were working with Brothers Concrete?
about the same.
All right.
Excuse me, can I add something here?
Do you wish to correct a previous answer?
I remember one other thing I had to do with Evergreen.
I would like the witness to correct his testimony here if it's okay with everyone else.
That's a good idea. Sir, what would you like to add?
We additionally worked on a parking garage where I worked with both cables and rebar.
Please tell me how that works. What do you physically do?
You place the rebar in both directions and then we rolled out cables and then put more rebar in.
Okay. Exactly how big is this cable you are dealing with?
The cable is approximately 1 inch in diameter,
How big is a spool?
about 4 feet high. You roll them out or drag them out with 2 people.
Are you physically lifting the cable spool?
Yes, ma'am, it's physical labor.
Do you do that by yourself or with another person?
By yourself, you put it on your shoulder.
Can't you just roll it?
No,
Okay, I'm a girl. I take the easiest way out.
they would yell at you if you did that.
Counselor, we have been going about an hour. Let's have a break.
I have only a few more minutes with this line of questioning. May I continue?
I really prefer to break it this time. Shaking her head. Take yourself off mute if you want. And she says, so bad. That's what she says.
Can you hear me?
You know, it was. I don't know if it's worse than the one with all the nursing and the RNs and the CNs and the, I don't know. That one was pretty horrible too. And I think that was November.
Is that the, what was,
Oh, she took herself off mute.
oh,
No, she's not.
Can you hear me?
Huh?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, well, that was fun. And now we're gonna do, we're gonna stick with the deposition, and then the last take is a court. So this is also a deposition, and we're gonna do the warm-up first. I'll take the corrector. Warm-up first, which is 5 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and give you the preview words now. And they are Peggy Cliff, Ken Vallow, Sue, I think it's probably long A, Peyton, Sue Peyton, Judy Goddess, Celeste, Marie, Ricky, Dale, Calvin, Regional Center, Community Cornerstone, Bimbo, CCI, Eureka, Humboldt County, Mendocino County. I am plaintiff attorney, Mr. Mayfield.
I am the witness.
I am defense 1, Mr. Schur.
I'm defense 2, Mr. Wells.
And we're going to do the first 5 minutes in 15s, and that will be 5 minutes of warm-up on the record with Mayfield. What training did you give her?
I'd take her on the route. I'd show her where to pull up and stop so that the client wouldn't have to cross the road at any time.
Anything else? Did you give her the handbook?
Yes, I did.
Did you tell her anything specifically about the client she would be picking up?
Each one, where to pick them up and just whether, no, I don't remember.
Did you mean by that, did she tell the driver?
Individual characteristics of clients.
An individual, what this one is, what that one is, what the problems are this one has, and that one, that kind of thing?
Yes, I did.
You did tell her about that.
Yes, I did talk about that.
Did Peggy have access to the client records that you talked about when you were the driver?
Yes.
Was there any kind of ongoing training that the drivers received at Cornerstone?
I don't know what you mean, ongoing training.
In that handbook that I gave you that was marked Exhibit 1, I believe it talked about additional training being required 2 or 3 hours a month or something to that effect.
Would you give us the page you're referring to?
I don't remember which one it is.
Let's have her see an exhibit then.
Do you still have the handbook there?
Yeah.
I'll just ask a question without reference to this book. Did the drivers have to do a certain number of hours additional training after they got their job at Cornerstone?
No.
Were safety memos or any other kind of documentation pertaining to transportation handed out to drivers by Cornerstone?
What, you mean other than the handbook?
The handbook,
No.
Could you refer to page 18 of the handbook? That's entitled Driver's Safety Responsibility. I'm looking at the first paragraph about halfway down. It says, safety will be stressed at all times. From time to time, memos on safe driving practices will be handed out. Do you know if that was done at Cornerstone?
No.
Was that done while,
No, meaning you don't know?
No, I don't know.
was that done while you were transportation coordinator?
Again, if you know.
She was the coordinator.
That doesn't mean that she handed them out. Someone else may have had that responsibility. We haven't made that clear.
Yeah, it wasn't just through me. I don't remember.
Who else had responsibility for safe transportation at the time you were CCI's transportation coordinator?
Ken Vallow.
Do you know if Ken handed out memos on safe driving?
I don't remember.
It also says in the handbook that there will be occasional driver meetings and workshops to keep all drivers mentally alert to their responsibilities. did that happen while you were the transportation coordinator?
During the client meetings, the driver would be at the meeting and they would go over the rules.
Any meetings with just drivers present?
Yes?
Were those done on a particular schedule?
No, when needed.
Who would be present at the driver meetings?
Myself and the driver and Ken and Sue Payton. She's also a driver.
You said as needed. Do you have any estimate you can give me as to how often those meetings were held?
No,
Was it more than once a month?
I don't know.
More than?
At times, there was more than once a month.
What sorts of subjects would be discussed at the drivers' meetings?
Changes or different.
What type of changes?
Changes in the route or client behavior on the van is a pretty regular daily discussion. Anything that we had noticed, anybody had noticed about. It could be as far as the way a safety of how a client are driving.
What sort of things would come under the heading of client behavior on the van? Give me some examples, please.
Arguments between the clients, discussions that they didn't feel was appropriate on the van, whether a client tried to remove their seatbelt.
Was that something that happened pretty frequently?
No.
Was any specific training given to Community Cornerstone's drivers about how to get clients in and off of the van?
I demonstrated. We use a stool for them to get into the van, and most of them don't like you to help them at all to get on the van. They're very independent and they're all able mostly to get off and on the van by themselves.
You said they don't like help. Is someone there to offer help generally? Is that Cornerstone's policy, or was it at the time?
Yes, if they needed assistance or wanted it.
Where would the driver be to offer assistance?
At my house or as a driver.
Okay, you were the driver. What would you do?
As a driver.
Let's go back. She's asking you now specifically about Cornerstone policies. We need for you to keep that separate in your minds as opposed to what your policies were as the Binbow care home provider.
So now we're going to start all over again?
Ms. Goddess, when you were the driver, what did you do to offer assistance to clients getting in and out of the van?
Different places. I would get out.
It varied. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, it does. I would get out and put the stool out. Celeste needed the stool to get in. She got where she could put it out by herself.
You told me earlier that the clients generally didn't like the help getting in and out.
Yes,
They wanted to be independent, that's right?
yes.
Nevertheless, did Cornerstone have a policy that the driver shall be present to help clients in and out of the van?
Can you remember now, this is Cornerstone we're talking about.
Cornerstone policy, present, meaning I assume they're sitting in the driver's seat. That's present.
It is vague and ambiguous.
I mean, it's,
Okay, so that was 5 minutes of warm up. Now we're gonna do a 12-minute. It's Binbow.
Binbow.
Really cool, what would you call it? Old lodge in Carberville.
Oh, you've been there?
I used to go there a lot when I lived in, when I was in school in Fortuna. It's on the river, Eel River. Okay, so we're now reading N15s. We've got the preview words, and we're starting a 12-minute. This is a 12-minute 200, beginning on page 74, line 12. I am attorney for the plaintiff, Mr. Mayfield.
I am the witness.
attorney for defense one, Mr. Scherer.
Attorney for Defense 2, Mr. Wells.
1 second, please. I'm gonna mark one thing. Okay, starts with Mr. Scherer in colloquy.
For the record, I mean, it's sort of obvious they're there. They drove the van there. Do you mean, do they have to sit in the driver's seat the whole time?
It seems like there could be a number of situations, which is kind of why I left it open-ended for her to respond. But if you would like a more specific question, I can ask one. Did you understand my question?
No,
Did Cornerstone have any procedure that they would tell the driver, we'd like you to be present outside the door to help clients in?
no,
Did Cornerstone leave it to the driver's discretion as to what assistance the clients would need?
yes,
Was it the driver's responsibility to open the doors to the van?
no,
Would the clients do that themselves?
yes,
How about getting in and finding a seat Would the clients do that themselves?
Yes.
Would the clients fasten their own seatbelts?
Yes.
Would the driver have the responsibility pursuant to Cornerstone policy to check whether or not the clients did fasten their seatbelts?
Yes.
How would that be done?
I would ask each one. I would listen to see that they snapped their seatbelt.
Did you also look?
I looked at the front seats. I could not see the back seat.
And this is when you,
I would ask another client if it was somebody that couldn't respond.
and this is when you were a driver?
Yes.
When you were training Peggy Cliff as to how to be a driver, did you instruct her as to how to check whether or not clients wear seatbelts?
Yes.
What did you tell her?
I told her if they couldn't respond, I told her that I asked. I just demonstrated mostly. I told her that I would ask a client next to them if they were, just to be sure, if I hadn't heard the seatbelt or seen it.
Once all the clients were in the van and belted, who shut the door to the van?
When?
When?
Generally. You were a driver for a long time. Would the clients generally shut the door, or would the driver generally shut the door?
When you were driving the van.
Right.
It depended.
I'm going to object, vague and ambiguous.
That's fine. He can make objections, but you still can answer the question, just so that you know.
When you were driving the van, was it one steady policy?
No,
Or did it depend?
it depended.
When you were training Peggy as to how to be a driver, did you give her any instruction as to how the door should be shut?
No,
When you were driving, was there a particular client who would usually shut the door for you?
no.
Did it depend on who got in last?
Who was by the door?
Who was by the door? Okay. Was there ever any accident while you were a driver involving a client getting their hand shut in the door or something to that effect? A door not being closed all the way and opening up while you were driving?
No,
No problems?
no.
Did you ever check to see if the doors were locked while the vehicle was moving?
I told them it was a rule not to have them locked.
And why was that?
It's one of the rules that we had.
What was the purpose of that rule?
It was for being able to get out of the van in case of an accident.
Is that rule written down in the handbook
I don't know.
as you sit here today? Can you recall any other basic rules that Cornerstone had similar to that? Don't lock the doors.
Other than what's in the handbook.
No, I'm asking her what her recollection is of rules that Cornerstone had for drivers.
That's a pretty broad question. I mean, what? Make a left-hand turn? Signal when you make a left-hand turn?
No. Safety rules that Cornerstone had for drivers. You just gave me one. Don't lock the doors. Enable you to get out faster in case of an accident.
My problem with that is that she can sit down and read us the handbook.
No, I'm asking her what her recollection is. If she doesn't have it, that's fine. But you guys have to tell me what she knows.
I don't know exactly what you mean.
Okay, that's fine. About how long did it take to drive the route to pick up clients, drop them off?
When she had it, or?
Right, when you had it.
3 hours.
That's how long it took for one trip. From the start in the morning until you dropped them at Cornerstone was 3 hours.
Right.
After Celeste's accident, did Cornerstone's policy regarding transportation change in any respect?
Objection. Post-accident, subsequent changes and so forth are inadmissible.
Right, objection,
They're not discoverable.
Go ahead.
if you know the answer.
Yes.
Can you recall any specific respects in which the procedures changed?
Hold on a second. They are not discoverable.
Oh, Les, please. Of course they're discoverable.
If they do not lead to relevant evidence and it's not admissible, then it may not be relevant.
Are you instructing her not to answer this?
I'm just putting that on the record. It's Community Cornerstone's question in any event.
Can you recall any respects that Cornerstone's policies for transportation changed after Celeste's accident?
Objection, same objection stated by Mr. Scherer.
She's not your witness. Go ahead.
Yes.
Can you tell me what they were?
The driver parks the van, turns it off, goes out and opens the door, and the clients get on or off. The clients do not shut the doors.
When did that policy go into effect?
Immediately.
Was that as a result of Celeste's accident?
Yes.
And what was the purpose of the new policy?
If you know.
Safety.
As transportation coordinator for Cornerstone, did you have any communications with other similar facilities who were transporting developmentally disabled clients just kind of sharing knowledge. What are your policies and procedures for transportation?
Yes.
What other associations or agencies were those?
Regional Center.
Which office of Regional Center?
Eureka.
Anybody else?
I don't remember discussing it with anybody else.
Are there other services that you knew of at the time you were transportation coordinator that operated in Humboldt County?
Outside of Eureka, no.
How about Mendocino County? Did you contact anybody down there who was transporting developmentally disabled people?
No.
Do you want to take our lunch break now? Is that okay with everybody? Judy, the day of Celeste's accident, well, let me start over. I'm going to go back and ask you a couple general questions first. You said that Celeste needed a stool to get in and out of the van at first, correct?
Yes.
Where was that stool kept?
Underneath the seat.
The front seat?
The seat right at the door, the front seat, yeah.
And when Celeste would get into the van, how was the stool brought out for her to use?
She would pull it out herself.
Put it on the ground?
Uh-huh.
Step on it and get in?
Uh-huh.
How high was the stool?
About that high.
About 18 inches, a foot?
A foot to 18 inches.
How high is the step into the van if you didn't use an outside step?
It's about like that. That's more like about 18 inches, I think. I'm not a real good judge of distance.
Was Celeste the only one that used that stepping stone?
No, there's other clients that use it.
Did you usually watch the Cornerstone driver load your clients from the Bimbo home into the van?
Yes, I was.
Did you watch as the clients loaded into the Cornerstone van?
Yes.
Was there a usual practice as far as what the driver did on those occasions, or did it vary day to day?
You mean at her home?
Yes, as she watched from Bimbo.
So we're talking now only about your care home and what happened there on a day-to-day basis and what the usual practice was.
The usual was I went out to the door with the clients when they got on because I was usually talking to another client that was already on.
You would go outside with your clients?
Every day, yeah.
To which door, the house or the van?
I would go out to the van door with them and speak to the other client that was on the van.
Was there a practice that you observed that the driver of the van would usually follow?
At my house?
Yes.
Do you understand that question?
Just at my house?
Yes.
She would put the van in park.
The van would remain running?
Yes, and she would stay in the seat of the van, driver's seat.
How would the clients get into the van?
How would they get in?
Uh-huh.
Just step up into the van? I don't understand.
Who would open the van door?
It depended on whatever client got there first. They would open it or I would open it if I got there first.
Which door was used to let the clients in?
The side door.
I saw the van today, and they had two side doors that opened out, correct?
Right.
Was one side open, or were both the van side doors open? We're talking generally.
Wait. Why is there a party sitting out in the lobby? Why isn't she sitting in here? Isn't she a defendant?
She's an employee of Community Cornerstone.
But she's a named defendant, isn't she?
Yes, she is.
She's entitled to be sitting in this deposition.
Nothing of my doing, Les. I'm just asking the questions.
Don't you want her to hear this?
I hadn't even thought about it, and thank you for raising it.
Go get her.
Off the record, back on the record. Can we have the previous question read?
Both doors.
After the doors were open, what would happen then?
The clients would get into the van.
And we've already talked about generally how the doors would be closed and the clients would buckle themselves in, correct?
Yes.
And then would the driver leave your home generally at that point?
Yes.
On the day of the accident, do you recall what occurred as far as the loading procedures?
I don't remember who got on the van, who opened the door. I don't remember.
Which clients got on the van that day?
Celeste, Marie, and Ricky.
Now, you had one other client, correct?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Did Dale go that day?
He was visiting his parents out of town.
On the day of the accident, was anybody on the van by the time it got to your home?
Yes.
And who was on the van?
Calvin.
Was he a regular rider of the van?
Yes.
Where was Celeste sitting when she got onto the van?
I don't remember.
When we looked at it today, it looked to me like there were 3 seats for clients to sit on.
Yes.
Did the clients ever sit in that front seat, the passenger seat near the driver?
Yes.
Was Celeste in that seat?
No.
Do you recall which bench Celeste was sitting on? The forward, the middle, or the back bench?
No, it wasn't the forward one. That's all I know. That's all I remember for sure.
The middle or the back?
Uh-huh.
Was anyone sitting on the bench Celeste was sitting on?
I don't remember. Marie was.
In your capacity as owner of the care home, when you would walk out with your clients, did you have a practice of checking whether or not they safely got in and seatbelted themselves into the van?
Yes, I was at the door. I'd talk to them when they were doing it. And sometimes I'd ask them if they buckled if I didn't see them do it.
Was it your practice, though, to check them as they loaded themselves into the van?
And I'm sorry, I'm not certain when this was. Are you talking about when she was a driver or?
While she was a care home operator, she testified that she would generally walk out to the van with her clients.
She just testified she would sit there and talk to them and ask them if they put their seatbelt on. What's the difference between that and checking them?
I'm wondering if she took it upon herself to check and see if they safely made it into the van and got their seatbelts on.
It was just kind of automatic. I think since I've been a driver, I think I automatically ask them to check them.
Would you usually stay outside until the van had driven off?
Yes.
Did you do that on the day of the accident?
Objection. The van never drove off.
That's true, it didn't. That's a good point, Les. Were you outside at the van door with your clients as they were loading the day of the accident?
No, I was talking to the driver. I was at the van.
Where were you standing?
I don't remember if I went there first or not, if I went directly to talk to Peggy or whether I went to the door first. I don't remember for sure if I did or not.
You do remember talking to Peggy, though?
Yes,
Where were you standing while you were talking with Peggy?
at the driver's side, right at the front of the van there.
Were you standing by the window in the driver's side?
Yeah, right at the, not right next to it, but right at the front of the van there I was,
Where was Peggy?
in the driver's seat.
Had she gotten out of the van that morning at your house?
No,
What were you talking to Peggy about?
I was giving her a message about clients in another care home that she would be going to pick up, not to pick them up.
How long were you talking to her there at the side of the van?
Just a couple minutes.
Could you hear any conversation of the clients while you were talking to Peggy?
No, not until one of them yelled, "Seizure."
Okay, we have one more. Do the 5-minute warm up first. And this one, if there's dates in here, then I can guarantee you they're really old. This is an oldie. So. Uh-oh. I only have 3 copies. Somebody's got a,
Okay, we'll share.
Okay, so I have to check something real quick here, sorry. 1, 2. So it's got a 2-minute lead in and then it's a 12-minute take. So let's just do the 2-minute lead in. And this is going to be, preview words are Dr. Holmes, Mr. Smith, Mr. Johnson, Wayne, Mrs. Smith. This is a court. And we have Mr. Coughlin for plaintiff, Miss Collier for the defense. So let me click something again. Right, real quick, I'm sorry. Sergeant's 1, 2, 3. Oh, the numbers are wrong. 4, 5.
Same? Oh, is someone missing a back page?
Yes, me.
Oh,
That's why I'm all
that's
mixed up
you.
here. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
It's
So
a good
actually,
thing
we do
you
have
saw
more-
that. I was like,
We
wait.
do have more than, we've got 3-minute warm up, okay? So here we go. I am Mr. Coughlin for the plaintiff.
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I'm attorney for defense, Ms. Collier,
Collier,
Collier.
I guess. Close enough.
That's what I'd say.
We'll start with the court, and this
Yeah,
is
Collier.
15.
and it is the court for the record. Go ahead, counsel.
Now, had you been able to compose yourself at the point when Wayne returned?
Well, I looked bad. My eyes were red.
But I mean, were you all right?
I was calm.
All right. Now, what, if anything, did you do with Wayne at this point?
Well, my husband called Dr. Holmes, and the doctor said he would meet us at his office, so we took Wayne up there.
All right. You then took him to Dr. Holmes, is that correct?
Yes.
And after Dr. Holmes saw the child, you did what with Wayne?
Took him home.
Did the boy sleep that evening?
Well, the doctor had given him a sedative and told us to keep our eye on him, to keep him quiet.
Now, was there any emotional reaction with Wayne the next day?
No, sir.
What did you do the next day, if anything, with Wayne in the way of discussing anything about the court order? Did you discuss it with Wayne?
No, I didn't.
Which day of the week was the next day?
Friday.
Was it school vacation for him?
It was a Friday.
Was school still in recess then?
On the 4th, I think they had returned to school, Your Honor.
Did he go to school the next day?
No, sir. I told him it was best not to talk about it, and we didn't talk about it all that day.
Why didn't you talk to Wayne about it?
Well, I couldn't stand to see him in that condition again. It was too hard on him. I didn't want that to happen again.
Did you try to then play with Wayne or in any way get his mind off of what appeared to be an emotional upheaval to him?
Yes.
What did you do?
Well, all of our things have been shipped, and we didn't have anything really to entertain him with. We went out and got a few things for him to play with. When I had to go to the post office, he wouldn't let me go off and leave him. He went with me.
All right, now, did you at any time after this, prior to coming into court at the last session, did you in any way discuss with Wayne anything against his father or against the custody provisions that the court had ordered?
No, sir, I didn't.
Did you make any effort to convince him that it would be a good idea?
No, sir.
Had you discussed with him before you came to court the fact that it was very likely that the court might give custody to his father?
I told him that this was possible, yes.
Did you tell him it might have some good aspects to it?
I don't think he really believed it could happen.
In other words, you didn't tell him,
No, sir.
and you didn't make any effort to make it seem like a good idea to him,
Well, I didn't want to talk him into going with his father.
but you didn't make any effort to point out to him that there might be some compensating benefits or anything of that sort.
I didn't talk to him about it at all.
You didn't prepare him for it at all.
No, sir.
During this emotional upheaval, did you say anything complimentary about Mr. Smith to Wayne?
I didn't say anything about Mr. Smith at all.
Did you call Mr. Smith and tell him about this situation?
No, sir.
Did anyone call him on your behalf as far as you know?
No.
Do you know when Mr. Smith found out about this situation?
No, I don't.
Do you have any reason to know? As far as you know, no one made any effort to tell Mr. Smith about it?
Excuse me, Your Honor.
I didn't hear the answer to the question. Did you know when Mr. Smith found out about it?
No, I didn't.
As far as you know, other than the fact that you saw him here in court, you assumed there must be some kind of communication between the attorneys and you didn't have any knowledge of how he found out about it or when he found out about it?
No, sir.
Mrs. Johnson, you recall that following Friday,
Yes,
you accompanied me to court here?
that's right.
You recall that after we approached or appeared in court that I made a phone call?
Oh, that's right. Yes, to Miss Collier.
May I represent to the court, Your Honor?
I am sure it was communicated. I just wondered what, if any, interest she took in seeing that Mr. Smith might be able to help his son.
Have you ever talked at any time derogatorily about Mr. Smith
No, sir.
prior to this incident occurring, which you have related? Have you talked to the boy about the benefits of Mr. Smith, that he was a good father, or things of this nature?
Many times in the past few years, I have told him this,
What have you said regarding Mr. Smith to the boy, Wayne?
that he must respect his father and mind his father, that he had a good father. I have told him this many times.
And do you honestly believe this?
Yes, sir.
The court is quite concerned as to your lack of communication with Mr. Smith during this crisis. Is there any particular reason you didn't call Mr. Smith during this crisis?
No, sir, other than maybe Wayne might have objected. I don't know.
You, in the past, had always called Mr. Smith, the father, whenever there had been problems with the boy, have you not?
Yes,
And you testified to this at the prior hearing, did you not?
yes,
And this was your concern, to keep Mr. Smith informed.
that's right.
Whatever the boy's problems, you would keep him informed.
That's right.
And you were calling him to enlighten him and to seek advice, were you not?
That's right.
Okay. So now we have a 12-minute 200. Did I give you? I gave you the previews, right?
Yes.
Okay. We are on page 6. Will we identify Mr. Coughlin for the plaintiff?
I am the witness.
I am the court.
I am attorney for defense, Mr. or Ms. Collier.
Collier. Okay, Mr. Coughlin's questioning. On the record, do you feel that your personal emotional upheaval had anything to do with not calling Mr. Smith during this period?
No, I was just primarily concerned about my son, really.
About your son, Wayne?
Yes.
If I had not called Miss Collier, would you have called Mr. Smith regarding this situation?
I don't know.
Did you call him and ask Mr. Smith to come see the boy? Was that your message?
No, I tried to reach Miss Collier to indicate what was happening.
That you had a restraining order changing the custody?
No, that I had medical statements.
You didn't make any effort to get Mr. Smith to come see the boy, did you? You're not taking the position that Mr. Smith wouldn't come when his son was in trouble?
Not at all, Your Honor. I make no such representation. Subsequent to the 4th of January, had you at all talked to Wayne about the custody proceedings that had been ordered by the court on January 3, 1983?
He wanted to talk to me about it many times, and I told him that I didn't think we should talk about it. On Saturday, I think it was Saturday, he insisted upon telling me why he didn't want to live with his father.
Now, has he related to you anything regarding this subject? Has he related this subject to you? Did you say anything to the boy?
I told him that I didn't think we should talk about it. He says, but I want to tell you why I don't want to live with my father. He says, you got to listen to me. And so I said, all right, but I didn't say anything against his father at that time. In fact, I don't think I have ever said anything to him against his father at any time.
Do you feel that, as the court has indicated, you should have called Mr. Smith at this point?
Well, maybe I should have, but Wayne wouldn't have wanted me to. I know that.
Are you really concerned with the best interests of this boy, Mrs. Johnson?
Yes, I am.
Are you willing to do everything in your power to do what you consider and what people will advise you as to the best interests of this child?
I certainly am, yes.
Do you feel that as the boy may grow in years to come, that if emotional crises will develop, that you will be stronger with the boy and be able to cope with him?
I am sure I will be able to, yes.
You would not allow any emotions of your own to reflect themselves on the boy if you would think they would be detrimental to his welfare?
One moment, Your Honor. I object. These are very leading questions.
I'm sure she feels that way. Let her answer. I will overrule the objection. She wants to benefit the boy. I don't think she perceives herself as the boy's enemy.
I'll do anything I can for him at any time.
What have been the relations between the boy and Mr. Johnson?
Excellent. Mr. Johnson is very good with him.
And has Mr. Johnson worked with the boy?
Yes, he has.
What did Mr. Johnson do during this period of emotional upheaval of Wayne?
He was calm, very calm. He always speaks very quietly. He was just trying to assure Wayne that everything would be all right.
Do you think that Mr. Johnson is going to be a stabilizing factor with the boy?
Well, yes, indeed.
Your Honor, I am not too certain as to the proceeding at this point because the boy has related these incidents and the mother could testify probably repetitiously to what the boy has testified to.
The boy can testify to whatever he said. I am not hearing hearsay.
That's right.
I don't know what the effect of this testimony is going to be. I have heard the boy. I have heard Dr. Holmes. I have heard the mother. Now, I don't know what the answer to it is. I really don't know. I am certainly not satisfied that this episode on Thursday is satisfactorily explained. This woman was still making a scene when she went to the doctor's office on Thursday night at 9 o'clock. She still had the girls with her at 9 o'clock, 6 hours later. She is not Wayne's enemy. I am not suggesting that. I am sure she loves him. I am sure that this whole episode grows out of the fact that she does love him. I have never questioned that. The question is she able to handle her love? Is it something she can manage without being damaging to the boy? I don't know the answer to it.
Your Honor, if I may say, as I said before, granted this woman did have an emotional upheaval.
Adults have the responsibility, adults who care for children. People have the responsibility of protecting children from crises like this. She had the responsibility of letting him know it was entirely possible that he might come to live with his father long in advance, or as long in advance of this hearing as she had notice of it. When she knew that she was going to move to Washington, if she had any knowledge of what the custody and visitation laws were, she knew then that the problem of whether or not Wayne was going to stay in California was being raised, but maybe she was ignorant of the law.
May I raise this question, Your Honor? Granted, we all know what the ideal parent would do in a situation like this, but
It is not ideal. This is minimum to guard a child against a crisis like this.
yes, sir.
You have seen the effect on the boy of her failure to do it, haven't you?
Yes, Your Honor, but the original emotional upheaval has subsided.
It hasn't subsided. Dr. Holmes told me she was crying and the girls were crying, and this was 6 hours later.
After the doctor's office, she calmed down.
6 hours later, she calmed down. Now, she herself should have been armed for this episode. If she is mature enough to take care of this boy, she is mature enough to face the fact that she might not have him with her all the time.
Your Honor, I have cross-examination on the subject of knowledge of the court order, which I would like to get into when counsel finishes.
I don't know whether he is finished or not.
Well, Your Honor, I feel that the woman loves her child.
I don't question that.
I know she wants the opportunity to raise the boy.
Of course she does. That is what she is fighting about, and that is why she went and assaulted him this way.
Your Honor, I think there is a tremendous stabilizing factor with Mr. Johnson.
Apparently not on this.
Well, Your Honor, I cannot argue that the plaintiff did not have an emotional upheaval with this, and granted that she should have been strong enough to hide her own emotions.
Or get away from the boy.
Get away from the boy or call Mr. Smith. But, Your Honor, I think that outside of this particular emotion that she has proven herself over the years.
I have read something different in the record. I haven't read the entire record, but I read a portion of it. A portion of the record would disclose that this is not so.
And we request, Your Honor, that she be given custody of this child.
What are your plans for going east? When did you plan on leaving for Washington?
Well, we don't have a ticket now. We were planning to go right after Christmas
When did you tell Mr. Smith of your plans to go to Washington?
in October.
October? Did you have a discussion with Mr. Smith about visitation with the boy?
Yes, I told him that the children could come and spend the summer with him.
Was there any further emotional upheaval by Wayne on that following Saturday?
There was by Wayne, but not by me.
And did you say anything to Wayne to cause this or to bring on this emotional upheaval?
I didn't say anything to Wayne. Wayne was the one who was talking. He said, "Mom, you have got to listen to me. The judge wouldn't listen to me. You have got to listen to me. Why I will not live with my father." And he started to cry, but I didn't cry. I told him that everything would be all right, but he just started blurting things out.
Now, what did you try to do at this point, if anything, to try to comfort this boy? Did you talk to him or reason with him?
Well, after about 15 minutes, when I could see that he was getting quite upset, I gave him a sedative that the doctor had prescribed for him.
All right, did you eventually take him to another doctor?
Yes, I did. Dr. Holmes was out of town.
That was on a Saturday, is that correct?
Yes.
The remainder of that week, did you talk to the boy at all regarding the possibility that he might live with his father?
Well, I didn't really talk to him about living with his father. He just kept wanting to tell me why he wouldn't live with his father. And I told him I didn't think we should talk about it because I knew he would get too upset.
You may cross-examine.
Mrs. Johnson, do you recall that we were in court on January 2nd and we had a hearing before Commissioner Gordon on January 2nd? Do you remember that?
Yes.
On January 3rd, you say you were advised of the decision made by the commissioner and that Mr. Johnson advised you of that decision. Is that correct?
He verified it with our attorney. Mr. Smith called me first.
Mr. Smith called you first. About what time did he call you?
It was about 5 or 10 minutes before Mr. Johnson called Mr. Coughlin.
Did Mr. Smith talk to you, try to talk to you about what arrangements you would make for delivery of Wayne to him?
He asked me if I had heard this from my attorney, and I said no. And he said, "Well, you had better check with him."
And did you hang up the phone then?
Yes, I did.
So you had some knowledge before 3 o'clock that the court had made that order.
Well, 5 or 10 minutes before.
You had no reason to doubt Mr. Smith, did you?
No,
Now, you didn't thereafter call Mr. Smith?
no, I didn't.
And as a matter of fact, you left the house a little after 3 o'clock, did you not?
Well, we had already moved out of the house. We were there just cleaning the house after the furniture had been moved out.
When you left, you didn't leave word with Mr. Smith where you would be, did you?
No, but he was told that he could reach me.
Who told him?
My father.
When?
I think Mr. Smith called my grandmother. We weren't there anymore. My grandmother is 84, and she is too old to have 5 people drop in on her.
You don't know of your own knowledge that anyone told Mr. Smith, do you? You weren't present when anyone told him where you would be?
No,
When was it that your father told Mr. Smith?
on Sunday.
On Sunday. So that from Friday to Sunday, as far as you know, Mr. Smith had no knowledge of where his son was?
Well, that's right.
You didn't return to the house after Friday, did you?
What house?
You didn't live in that house after Friday?
We didn't live there after Thursday.
Why was that?
Well, the furniture was gone.
Did you sell the house? Was it sold at that time?
Yes, it is still in escrow, but it was sold.
When you told Wayne, or when Wayne told you he didn't want to live with his father, did you suggest to Wayne that he call his father and talk to him?
He said he didn't want to talk to his father.
Do you always follow Wayne's wishes?
I don't make him call his father. I have made him many times go with his father when he didn't want to, but I have never made him call him.
As a matter of fact, Mrs. Johnson, that Thursday when you received knowledge of the court's order, did you not have your reservations made for a flight to Washington the next day?
Yes, that's right.
For all of the children and yourself?
Yes,
Do you remember that we first came to court in this matter the day before Christmas? Do you recall that?
yes,
And Wayne came with you that day, did he not?
that is right.
He knew at that time what this matter concerned, did he not?
Yes, he did.
Didn't he visit his father at Christmas and stay several days?
Yes,
Did he cry and scream about going?
no,
There was no protest?
no.
Didn't he stay with his father during the entire summer of 1960?
He stayed at least a month.
Was there any complaint to you that his father was cruel to him or that he didn't want to go because his father was cruel to him?
He didn't want to go because his father was cruel to him?
Did he complain of that?
No,
Was he with his father for about a month during the summer of 1981?
if that is the summer they took the trip east, yes.
Now, did Wayne object to visiting his father that summer?
No,
The summer of 1982, did his father have him for about a month?
it might have been a month. I think it was less.
Any objection on Wayne's part to visiting his father during that period of time?
No, there was no objection. I always encouraged him.
When Wayne returned from these visits, did he tell you stories of how cruel his father had been to him?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay, that's it.
1962. Where was that?
I'm gonna